told you I was gonna take a break for a minute. Back to the. I ain't even gonna read the title because they be lying like shit. Let's go.
They couldn't make too.
Best friend Leah and I promised that we would take each other to our senior prom. We'd even sworn it in blood. So this was a legit pact that we wouldn't let either of us break. At the time of our story, it was
What?
January.
Hold up.
Uh,
They started off bullshit. Just bullshit.
Beginning of the new year and the new semester at school. Leah and I were headed to the lunchroom when she felt horrible pain in her knee. This pain was so bad that she lost her balance and fell to the ground. I grabbed her by her arm and pulled her up. She was shaking and her face was white. Leah, are you okay? I asked. I wanted to try to get her to the lunchroom quickly, thinking that maybe she was just hungry and needed to sit down. She sat with her hands on her knees for a few minutes before finally answering me. Simon, I think something's really wrong with me. My knee has been hurting ever since I got kicked 2 weeks ago at the soccer game. She started to limp to the office, which was opposite of the lunchroom. I tried to stop her. Let's just get some food. No, I need the nurse, she said as she hobbled to the office. I helped her along the way, but as soon as she got there, she told me to go to lunch. Leah didn't make it to lunch that day. In fact, her mom picked her up early to take her to the hospital. I kept texting her all day long, hoping she would answer me and let me know that she was okay. It wasn't until around 8:30 that night that she finally texted back. She sent me a picture of an MRI, which is an x-ray of your body, and hers was of her knee, her lungs, and her neck. All of them.
Escape to the world of anime with the Funimation app, making both subs and dubs.
You motherfuckers better not say what I think you're about to say.
Were covered in spots. I didn't know what that meant, so I sent her a question mark. Almost instantly, my phone lit up. Leah was FaceTiming me. I pushed accept and saw her face for the first time since lunch. It wasn't as pale, but she looked tired. Hey, what's going on? Did you go to the doctor? Are you sick? I asked. Her eyes looked red and her hair was a mess. Leah could barely get the words out as she stared off the screen. I could see tears running down her cheeks. I have cancer, she stated, before bursting into tears. All of those pictures were of my body.
Wait a minute.
She set
hold
the
on.
phone down and all I could...
Wait. If this ends like I think it's going to, I will never watch none of these from this stupid channel ever in my life. So you trying to tell me, okay? Spoiler alert. He ain't kissed this bitch. Hey, we got a one. Hey, people. Not watching the stream. I'm just doing my job. Talk to me later. Call me back. Now look. If he kissed this bitch and he did shit and then she died, she got cancer already. What the fuck is wrong? This doesn't make any sense. Please don't tell me they're gonna say that. That's just the stupidest shit ever. He didn't kiss her yet, so he gonna kiss her and then she died, but it was from cancer.
Here were her high-pitched wails and her mom in the background trying to calm her. Instead of listening to my best friend sob, I decided to drive over to her house, even though it was late and I was going to miss curfew. I had to see her, to hug her, in case I didn't get the chance again. When I got to her front door, I didn't even knock. I just barged right in and ran to her room. Her mom was there hugging her, and I scooped in next to them. We all cried for a bit, and then when things calmed down, Leah turned to me. I have to start chemo next week. I nodded. I didn't know what to say. I grabbed her hand so she would know I'll always be there for her. A couple months passed, and although Leah was doing good, she wasn't out of the woods. The tumors were shrinking. Some of the chemo was working, but she was still struggling to live her day-to-day life. There were only a couple more days left until prom, and I was excited to finally pick out a corsage to put around her wrist. She was doing so good that the doctor told her she could go to the dance, but she had to sit down for most of it. She was allowed to slow dance, but no crazy dancing. She was okay with that. And so was I. My other best friend Malik and I were out tux shopping.
Don't tell me,
This
Lord.
dress was going to be maroon, and she wanted me to match. So I was going to every tux rental store I could find to try and match the perfect shade of her dress. It was harder than you might think. While we were at the 57th shop, my phone started to ring. It was Leah's mom.
It's the neighborhood dispute that blew up into a full-blown SWAT team crisis. It started with two little brothers, and
Nigga, please shut up.
I answered, my voice already shaking. Hi, Simon. Leah's back in the hospital. She wants you to come up here when you can. I didn't even hesitate. I said goodbye and started to walk out of the store. Malik stopped me and told me to at least rent my tux. I told him Leah was in the hospital and probably wasn't going to make it to prom. That's when he got a big grin on his face and grabbed the first tux he saw. We're getting this, he said, pulling me over to the register. It's not even the right color, I said. It doesn't matter. If Leah can't come to prom, we'll take prom to her. That sounded like a genius idea. Malik and I visited Leah in the hospital that night. She wasn't doing well. Her eyes were sunken with dark black circles around them, and her thinning hair was messy and damp. I asked her mom to please make sure Leah feels beautiful tomorrow when we come back, and she asked why. That's when I pulled her into the hallway and told her we were going to plan the biggest prom party for Leah we could imagine. Her mother grinned. I hadn't seen her smile like that in months. She gave me the biggest hug and kissed me on my cheek. You are a beautiful person, Simon. We love you. I love you too, I said as I walked away. Now, it was time to plan the prom that would hopefully bring Leah the dream she deserved. That night, I went on Facebook and invited all of Leah's best friends to come
Don't
to
tell
the
me, don't
dance
tell me,
we were having.
Lord.
I went to Target and got some fairy lights, a bunch of streamers, and finally to the florist to purchase a beautiful corsage for the most beautiful girl in the world.
Don't
We
tell me,
invited
Lord.
everyone to get dressed up in their prom attire for the next evening, as we were going to have a shindig whether Leah could go to prom or not. She deserved to be treated like a queen. Although some people declined our invitation as they didn't want to miss their own prom, many of our closest friends said they would come, and even planned to bring food, drinks, and other things to make Leah feel like one in a million, which she was.
Don't tell me,
Malik came
Lord.
over the next afternoon, and we loaded up his truck with all of the things that we got over the last day and a half,
Come on
including
with
a
it.
Bluetooth speaker and a fog machine that Malik found in his sister's room. We got dressed in our tuxes and made sure that everyone that said they
Why
were
his
coming
friend
would
look
be
better
there.
than Tugs than you?
Even Malik's girlfriend decided to come along. She got Leah's dress from her house and was going to do her hair and makeup before the dance. I couldn't wait to see the surprise look on
She
Leah's
still got
face
the
when
same
we showed
t-shirt
up.
she had on at the
All
beginning.
night,
I know. Shut up. Why, Charlotte? Why? I know. It's an animation.
she was texting me about how sad she was that she was going to miss prom, and she kept begging me to go without her. I told her that wasn't happening, and to just be happy, and I'd see her tomorrow.
Oh,
She
Lord.
didn't know we'd have all this for her, and I couldn't wait to show her. The drive to the
Don't tell
hospital
me,
was
Jesus.
filled with anticipation. Leah's mom met us at the front door to take all the decorations. Leah had been sent to another room to do some tests, so we had time to set up before she got back. In just under a half an hour, the hospital room sparkled with fairy lights and had gorgeous blue and green streamers running along the bed and window. Malik set up the fog machine, which the doctor said wasn't a good idea, so we had to leave it off. The music was playing softly, and we moved some of the furniture and medical equipment out of the way so we could have a dance floor. Leah arrived, and although she looked pale, her eyes lit up at the sight of what was ahead of her. At the same moment, she started to cry. You guys, I'm not dressed for prom. She giggled and came over to hug me. That's okay. We got everything that you need right here.
Don't tell
Take
me,
your
Lord.
time. Ashley is going to help you with your makeup and your dress. We'll be waiting out here as long as you need. It seemed like forever, but it was probably only 20 minutes later. Leah emerged from the hospital bathroom with her hair in a braid, that wrapped around the top of her head, and her beautiful maroon dress
You mean a
that clung
bun?
to her in all the right places. It was sparkly and made her eyes glow. This was the exact moment I realized that I was in love with Leah. It seemed like everything had stopped when she walked out of the bathroom.
Don't
I
tell
was
me.
so happy to see her so happy. I went over to her and gave her a huge hug. I pulled her hand up to mine and said, "I'm the luckiest guy in the world to
Why,
have
Lord.
you as my prom date." Then I slid the corsage on her wrist. Malik got the party started. We all began to dance, have snacks, and crack jokes about how lame the other prom probably was. After an hour, I could tell Leah was struggling to keep up. "Hey, you can sit down if you need to." She grabbed onto my arms as I helped her sit in the chair. She was looking pale again.
Oh,
"Are you
Lord.
okay?" I asked. She waved me off. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just all the medicine and tests today. I'm tired. But I'm having a great time, and I am so happy and so grateful that you did this, Simon. I really appreciate it. I love you." I know she was saying I love you as a friend, but it made my stomach flies. "I love you too, Leah," I said. There must be a look in my eye that told her I didn't mean as a friend, and that's when she leaned over to kiss me. I had never kissed a girl before. Don't judge me. I know I'm a senior, but it was never something that I thought about. Kissing Leah felt like home. I just didn't want to break her. I knew she shouldn't be kissing me right now. I don't think she cared. We pulled back, and I smiled at her. She rested her head on my chest, and we watched as the others danced and threw popcorn at each other from across the room. Thinking back on that night, I am so happy that I was able to give Leah her wish of being my prom date. After everyone left, her and I cuddled on her bed some more. We kissed, and I told her that I loved her again. She pulled me close and set it back, staring into my eyes. Then we both laid down. Leah was getting ready to go to bed, and I was getting ready to head home. Her mom walked in and told me to get out before I got yelled at by the night nurses. We hugged, and I left feeling triumphant, ready to take on the world. At 7 the next morning, I received a phone call from Leah's mom. She had passed away in the night,
Why,
sometime
Lord.
soon after I left the hospital. When she told me, I was speechless. I had plans to go to the hospital today and bring Leah some books she'd wanted to read. There was a big stack of new bestsellers sitting on my desk. I wasn't much of a reader, so the books broke my heart. I started to weep. I haven't cried that hard since I was a little boy, but it felt like to let my emotions out. I was practically wailing when my own mother barged in my room to see me laying in the fetal position on the floor.
I know
"What's
that
going
feeling,
on,
bro.
Simon?" she said, terrified. I could barely say the words. Leah died. My mom knelt beside me and hugged me for what seemed like hours as I cried. Leah was my friend, my second half, my one true. I know it sounds corny, but she was. I just realized over the weekend that I love this girl more than anything in the entire world. She was always there for me. She never gave up on me. And she was always passionate about what I wanted in life as much as she was about her own desires. I will forever be thankful that I was able to spend Leah's last night with her and with our friends having a blast. I'll never forget the smile on her face, love in her eyes that night. Although I have to go through the rest of my life without my other half, I'll be okay. Leah's family will always be a part of my life, and I'm hoping they'll continue to want me in theirs. I do make some pretty incredible hamburgers after all. Leah was caring, gentle, and willing to try anything. So, today, I'd like you to try and be a little more like Leah. Thank you all for coming. The entire time I was speaking at Leah's funeral, I couldn't stop staring at the photo they used for her memorial. Her senior picture. She had all of her beautiful blonde hair cascading down her back, her huge blue eyes shining in the autumn sun. This was my favorite pictures, so I was thankful they shared that with everyone. After I finished my piece, her parents came to hug me. We all cried together, and they thanked me for loving their daughter. That happened over a year ago now, and I'm still recovering from the death of my best friend. Leah's parents could.
Guess who just got us tickets to the wedding? Does this have anything to do with Trevor Holt? No.
We get together every weekend for board games and burgers. I'm hoping as the years go on, we can continue to have this strong bond, and that whoever I end up with will be half the woman Leah was. I'm sure she'll help me out from where she's looking down on us. Thank you for listening to my story. What was something crazy you did for a friend? Please like and subscribe.
Well,
As if the last year of school before college wasn't stressful enough, my dad got himself fired and we had to move to a new city so he could find a new job. It wouldn't have been so bad, except dad was a teacher at my school, so
excuse me. She look old as fuck. Don't make no sense. Said to say that.
everyone knew what he'd done. It was one of the worst things to happen to us since Mom died when I was 12.
What'd he do,
But
girl?
this time, it was all Dad's fault. You see, he was having an affair with the principal's wife, and someone in my grade filmed them and shared it across social media. I could have stayed at this school and finished my exams.
Why
But let's
she
be honest,
crossed?
I'd
Wait
never
a
let
minute.
it down.
Hold on.
I lasted about 3 days before he didn't even look at me. He just said, "You should be ashamed." One guy came up to me and said that me and my dad were a disgrace at this school and
Wait,
finished my
I got a
exams.
question.
But let's be honest, I'd never li-
Okay,
as
Where
if
you
the
going
last
back or forward?
I'm gonna go back.
Okay.
Do y'all watch? I know y'all probably do because he got millions of subscribers. Alex Clark, when he kissed his girlfriend, he was like, and they tongues touch. That's tongue wrestling, yo.
year of school before college wasn't stressful enough, my dad got himself fired and we had to move to a new city so he could find a new job. It wouldn't have been so bad, except dad was a teacher at my school, so everyone knew what he'd done. It was one of the worst things to happen to us since Mom died when I was 12.
What'd he do?
But this time, it was all Dad's fault. You see, he was having an affair with the principal's wife, and someone in my grade filmed them and shared it across social media. I could have stayed at this school and finished my exams.
What's
But
wrong
let's
like
be
that?
honest, I'd never live it down. I lasted about 3 days before I went to the principal and told him I was leaving. He didn't even look at me. He just said, "You should be ashamed of your dad. Get out of my school." When I was emptying out my locker, one guy came up to me and said that me and my dad were a disgrace, and I shouldn't show my face in this town again. I
What
couldn't
did
get
you
out of there
do?
fast enough. So Dad and I
Yeah,
packed
that
up and
was
moved,
funny.
leaving our
With
old
the
life
wife.
behind.
Oh,
I was miserable
I
at
missed that
first.
part. Don't you be
The video was still viral, and I even thought about asking Dad if I could change my surname to Mom's old name, just so I wouldn't have to be associated with it all.
Damn, the
Dad couldn't find a
shame.
job anywhere. Everyone recognized him from the video, and some newspapers had written about it too. It was a nightmare. I knew I'd have to start at a new school so I could sit my final exams, so I decided to try and disguise myself. I cut my long hair into a pixie cut and bleached it blonde. Then I got my nose pierced. On the first day, Dad offered to drive me, but I told him I'd walk, just in case anyone recognized him. I knew I was being mean to him, but I didn't care. He'd ruined my
What the
reputation,
fuck?
and I wasn't about to let him do it again. As I was walking to school, I wasn't paying
Why she
attention,
walk
and I
like that?
bumped into a young guy. "Hey, watch it," he said. "I'm blind." I apologized, then looked back
Yo,
at him.
was he
Wow,
slapping the
I'd
bitch?
never have known he was blind.
Fuck.
And then I got an idea. I reached into my bag and put on my sunglasses. And then when I got closer to the school, I held onto the wall and walked alongside it slowly. I could see people looking at me, but I didn't care. A few people started whispering, and I let go of the wall. What was I even doing? But then a girl came up to me and introduced herself as Elsie and took me by the arm and offered to help me walk to class. She said her brother was blind too, so she knew how difficult it could be sometimes. Well, too late now. I'd started this, so I just have to play along.
Let's
I
turn it.
mean, how hard could it be? I told her I was new around here and this was my first day. She seemed so excited. She started describing things to me, like where the girls' bathroom was, and then she took me to register, and I was so sure the principal would know I was lying. But it seemed this school took disability seriously. For the first time in ages, I felt like people actually cared about me. Elsie was assigned as my guide, and that first morning passed in a blur. When she introduced me to her boyfriend at lunch, I had to stop myself from staring at him. He was such a babe. But then I realized I could stare all I wanted because he obviously thought.
She didn't have a cane. And she could have just said that she can see a little. Because you can see a little and still be legally blind.
I couldn't see him. And when Elsie had her back turned, I could see him checking me out, looking me up and down. And from the way his mouth was hanging open, it was clear he thought I looked good. It was like a whole new world had opened up. As soon as people found out I was blind, they did all kinds of things in front of me. One guy was picking his nose.
Wait.
Good. It was like a whole new world had opened up. As soon as people found out I was blind, they did all kinds of things in front of me. One guy was picking his nose, and then when we went to the bathroom, Elsie didn't even close the door. It was pretty awkward, but what could I do? Surely someone would catch me out. And yup, sure enough, in the afternoon, things went downhill.
All right, let's talk. Did anybody know, and if you are, please put in the comment section, does that really happen around blind people for real? And they just don't know it? Like, you just take off all your clothes, like, motherfucker can't see me, so...
I think if that's what they do normally, they'll do it. I don't think that people just got it their way because they're blind and they can't see. Some things they may, I mean, I don't think it's anything big, but, you know, like, okay, something like the dude picking his nose, they may pick their nose, you know, so they think you can't see. But I don't think they do any big drastic changes. I don't think they would go to the girl's bathroom and sit with the door open just because he's blind.
Well,
and then they might. Who knows?
You know, that's what I'm saying.
If they got to pee real bad, you know what I'm saying? And they go into the bathroom. No, they may not even think about shutting the door, because if there was that person, because the person is blind. If nobody was in there, yeah, they might do it too. But if somebody else is in there, then they'll probably shut the door. They'll make that effort, but they don't have to make that effort because they can't see anyway. You know what I'm saying?
And besides the fact she ain't got no sunglasses, she ain't got a harmonica, she ain't even got a damn piano. Nobody's gonna believe you. These niggas is 2020. They think Stevie can see.
If she would have a K. If she would have a K. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Well, no, but basically.
No, because Blind Fury don't use a cane. You know the white rapper? You don't use
but see, this he has people with him also. And this is she's supposed to be new there. So you don't know.
Oh yeah, okay, I see what you're saying. But this is why these stories be bullshit.
Elsie dropped me off at the classroom for people with special needs, and then she just left me there. I looked around me and realized people there seriously had proper disabilities and learning difficulties. I wanted to scream that I was a fraud and run out, but the teacher came over to me and
Oh, they put the little bitch in the slow class with the helmets on them. Why, Lord, why? The soldier, lying does not pay. Unless you
because like in math you need to see.
Or they may fuck with her and give her some braille shit she can't read. Anything way.
And that's why I say she can see, but her vision is very
Low
good.
a hug,
visibility.
and I
Yeah.
was reminded why I
No,
was doing
Your
this.
story's stupid.
Anything to avoid being the girl whose dad got fired because of an affair. But then she put a book in front of me, and I realized it was Braille, and
Told
my heart
ya.
almost stopped. How was I supposed to know what this book was about? I had no clue
Why
how
the
to read
shaky ass
it.
hands?
I had to get out of there. I told her I wasn't feeling very well, and then I reached out to grab onto the chair in front of me so I could feel my way out of the classroom. But I didn't even realize how hard I'd pulled it, or the fact there was someone sitting in it. And the next moment, the chair was falling on top of me, and then a girl fell onto the floor. I just lay there
What the fuck?
to get out of there. I told her I wasn't feeling very well, and then I reached out to grab onto the chair in front
Okay.
of me so I could feel my way out of the classroom.
Where are these
But I
hands coming
didn't even
from?
realize how hard
Yo, look.
there. I told her I wasn't feeling very well, and then I
Watch
reached
the
out to grab
hands.
onto the chair in front of me so I could feel my
Where's
way out of
the
the
anime
class. But I
steel?
didn't even
Those
realize
arms
how
like
hard
a
I
nigga
pulled it,
nerd.
or the fact there was someone
Nigga.
well, and then I
Her
reached
arms
out
are
to
right
grab
there.
onto the chair in front
Where
of
the
me,
fuck is it coming
feel my
from?
way out of the classroom.
That's weird
But I
as
didn't
shit.
even realize how hard I'd pulled it, or the fact there was someone sitting in it. And the next moment, the chair was
Okay, wait a minute, hold.
That was a long way too.
We know you ain't blind, but you must be crazy. Cause how you pull a chair, somebody in it, you pull them over, but the chair lands on top. Bitch, you know you can see. That don't make no damn sense. So she just gonna ham up the whole damn thing. Bitch, I couldn't see, so I pull it. Nigga,
She put that shit hard as hell. Too.
but where them hands came from? She had extra strength with all them hands. Fuck you mean, man? What is
on
that?
top of me, and then a girl fell onto the floor. I just
What
lay there
one?
trying
Hold
not
on.
to cry.
Who?
How had I not seen her sitting there?
Tell
This
me.
whole faking being blind thing was starting to mess with me. Then it got worse. She landed on her arm and broke it. She
What?
was actually blind, which made me feel so bad.
Yo, what the? I think they be animating these stories while we watching them at the same time. Because where the fuck did that come from? Okay, let me backtrack. This little baby bitch pulls the chair over, and she said it landed on top of her.
The chair landed on top of her.
How? Why did she fall down in the first place?
Because she pulled too hard and her chair came at her. She lost her balance.
Stop acting like you wrote the story. This bullshit. That does not make any sense. That all of a sudden and I swear for Lord that was a different girl. She pulled out the damn chair.
Now, like I said, she had to pull that chair very hard.
Hold up. Look at the girl in the chair for a second. She has on different shit, don't she?
Grab onto the chair in front of me so I could feel my way out
Oh,
of the
my bad. It's
classroom.
his hair.
But I didn't even realize how hard I'd pulled it, or the fact there was someone sitting in it. And the next moment, the chair was falling on top of me,
Now, see, she
and then a
had to
girl
fall herself.
fell onto the floor.
But how she fall on the floor from the sky?
Because she pulled on her chair
No,
hard
did
as
you
hell as
see-
she came.
Did you see how she landed from the sky?
Mm-hmm. And she pulled it.
No, they could have do that shit when she fell out the chair. The bitch came from the board up that way.
I don't know.
They were stretching this shit. And then all of a sudden she miraculously happened to be blind. So if you pretend to be blind, you forget you can see after a while. Because she the door. I don't get it.
Just lay there trying not to cry. How had I not seen her sitting there? This whole faking being blind thing was starting to mess with me.
Yo!
Then it got worse.
Hold on, wait. If you look at that scene before, she looked all Twix, just laying there like something wrong with her. Then she sit up, like this picture right there, she's sitting up. Wait a minute. Didn't this bitch say she broke her arm?
The girl that fell broke
Yeah,
her arm. Yeah.
She got both her arms intact in the right spot. She said, and this bitch laying down like she didn't go to stroke or something.
Landed on her arm and broke it. She was actually blind, which made me feel so bad. And no one was even angry with me because they all assumed I couldn't see. The teacher ordered an ambulance for the blind girl and offered to call my parents to pick me up. And I panicked and said,
Okay, wait a minute. We can't even get a blind girl a name. Oh, they call the ambulance for the blind girl.
Yeah.
You can't get him for real? Y'all can't even give her a name?
She was never introduced to him.
I don't give a damn. She has a disability.
When you come in, they tell them your name.
Hi, everyone.
This is so and so.
Dad was sick and my mom had passed away years ago. The teacher felt so bad for me and said I could rest in her office until the end of the day, and then she'd drive me home. I sat in the teacher's office and waited, and then eventually I decided to.
Hold on a minute. Why the fuck does she need to stay in the... Never mind.
Because she wasn't feeling well.
Never mind.
Without her
Never
noticing.
mind.
I left a note thanking her for looking after me. I wrote it with my left hand, of course, so it would look realistic, and then I snuck out. Everyone was in class.
Okay, first of all, why she walking like that? Two, do you have to teach blind people how to write?
I didn't see the lines.
That's what I'm saying. She's supposed to be blind, and she wrote this on non-college rule.
It was making them what rule it was.
Them lines were straight. Again,
That's how I found out she found out.
the door.
So I just walked out of there like normal and headed home. When I got home, Dad was in a good mood. He'd got a job interview and he had a date that night. I just ignored him and went to my room. What a crazy first day. The next day, Elsie was awake.
First of all, me and Daddy would have to have a conversation. Jobs and digits don't go together for you, nigga. What the fuck is you doing? You either get a job and support your family or get some pussy. Both of these is the reason why I had to pretend to be blind.
For me at the gate, and I had to pretend I didn't see her and walk straight past her, but she grabbed my hand and helped me to class again. Then my teacher was there to
Why do they
welcome
walk
me,
like
and she
that?
said she had some exciting news, that seeing as I was 18 and blind, and my dad was sick, I could claim some benefits to help me out. I couldn't believe it. Jackpot. Maybe being blind
Wait
wasn't
a minute, no, Slim, no. So she gotta get a disability check. Okay, this is getting fucked up. And if I'm not mistaken, this bitch said her daddy was sick. Not as sick as her, apparently. Damn. I should have
bad
pretended not to
after
walk
all.
a long time
That
ago.
morning I
God
had
damn.
gym class, which I wasn't expecting. I thought another perk of being blind would be that I got to skip sports and stuff. But no, it was so humiliating. It was a swimming class.
Wait, what? You niggas and these fucking stories get me pissed off. And you niggas, and the people that watch these shits, besides people that react to them like myself, y'all be letting this shit fly because it's a cartoon. But don't y'all realize somebody actually wrote that story? That is stupid. Nigga, I can't walk. It's widely known, especially if you watch my channel. I never got out of sports because I couldn't walk. They said, well, hey, let's try it this way, which means I still had to participate. So the fuck, oh my God. And then she got a disability check, so the play could come next, right? So she could just park up front. Then she get a what you call them serving dogs. Like, dude,
But if she's blind, she'll need a place at all because she can't be driving.
you're not getting the logic here. What was that? You're going in real time. We talking about animation time here.
In animation time, she ain't gonna get no place because she can't drive. She's blind.
She shouldn't even get a disability check.
She probably don't.
The gym teacher gave me a swimsuit and I put it on backwards, thinking that would be more realistic. But our special needs department teacher rolled her eyes at me and said that by now,
Wait a minute. This stupid as shit. And I'm sorry, any blind people should flag the fuck out of this video because I put the bathing suit on backwards because I'm blind. Then out of left field, the special ed teacher's in the corner. What?
surely I knew how to dress myself. She'd been so nice to me up until now. I didn't get it. I kept watching her and she was constantly looking at her phone. The rest of the day dragged by. Faking being blind was hard work. After school, I decided to go check out the mall.
Why does
I wore my
everybody walk
sunglasses
like
in case
that?
anyone from school saw me. Anyway, the mall was pretty lame, so I bought a milkshake and decided to leave. Suddenly, I saw Elsie and her boyfriend, and I panicked. I was playing on my phone, and I was like, that's it. My act is up. They were kissing, so I walked by quickly, hoping they wouldn't see me. And then I realized something. It wasn't he was kissing. I looked right at him, and he froze and opened his mouth to say something. Then I heard him whisper under his breath, "Never mind, she's blind. Phew. Except I wasn't blind, mister, and you have officially been caught in the act." I walked back around, hid behind the fountain, and quickly snapped a pic of them kissing. Elsie deserved better. I looked her up on Instagram and sent her a private message with the photo. She replied straight away saying, "Who is this? Why are you trying to ruin my relationship?" And then it clicked. My Instagram handle wasn't my name, and my pic looked nothing like me. Oh yeah, and I was blind. Obviously, she didn't know it was me. Well, at least she now knew that her boyfriend was a lying, cheating. Over the next few days, Elsie didn't come to school, and I regretted sending her that photo. If she found out it had been me who sent it, I'd probably have lost my only friend.
Bitch, you ain't even got a friend in Jesus. What the fuck?
I could see her boyfriend looking at me in a horrible way, but I just kept my head down. She must have told him someone had seen him that day. Was he on to me? He definitely was, because on Friday afternoon, I saw him going into my locker and taking my phone. It took all my strength not to jump out at him and stop him, but it was too late. He had taken it. I hurried
Why
home
do
wondering
they
what I
all
could do.
walk like
He'd see
that?
all photos and figure out I'd been faking it. I could report my phone missing, but I had no proof that it was him that had done it. I couldn't
She done
exactly
read
say I'd
cuts the
seen
same
him.
out 7
I just
times.
wanted to get home to try
Yo,
and
check
figure
this
out
shit
what
out. Wait a minute.
out at him and stop him, but it was too late. He had taken it. I hurried home wondering
One,
what I could do.
2,
He'd see all the photos
3,
and figure out I'd been faking it. I could report
4,
my phone missing, but I had no proof
5,
that it was him that had done it.
6,
I couldn't exactly say I'd seen him.
7.
I just wanted to get
Ooh, that
home
was
to
actually
try and
right.
figure
7
out
times.
what I'd do next. Except that was not what happened. My
Oh,
dad had
bitch, tell
invited
us.
his date over, and as soon as I walked through the door, he told me to get changed and come join him in the kitchen. Great, just what I needed. I was chopping carrots when she arrived. I turned around as my dad introduced her. "Allison, sweetie, come meet my new girlfriend, Susan." I literally just missed my foot. I dropped the knife right out of my hand and stared in shock. "Oh no,
Yeah.
Allison, are you okay? Wow, what a coincidence. You shouldn't be using sharp knives." "Come on, Kevin, surely you know better than that," she said. "Hang on, you two know each other?" my dad said. "Why, yes, of course. I'm Allison's teacher. Why didn't you mention your daughter was blind? I had no idea you were her father. In fact, she told me her
This that bullshit. This that book. You know what? Next.
I'm Tracy, and when I was 13, my mom got pregnant. I was an only child, so I was very excited. When my dad found out, he went nuts. He started throwing things everywhere and yelling at my
That's
mother.
because it ain't his baby.
Thought he was going crazy, but then I heard him shouting that the baby wasn't his.
Told you.
My dad had a vasectomy after I was born, so that only meant one thing.
Hey, New Yorkers, do your part to stop the spread of coronavirus. Stay home and minimize outside interactions when you can.
Shut the fuck up.
Mom had cheated on him. I'd stormed into my parents' bedroom and started throwing things into a bag. He called out for me, but I was too afraid to go see him. He was so angry. When I didn't answer, he came into my room to talk to me. He said he wanted me to go with him, but I couldn't stay with someone who behaved like that. He said I was staying with Mom because she'd need help with the baby. Dad got really upset. He started crying and saying if I loved him, I'd take his side and stay with him, not take the side of someone who'd stabbed him in the back. I felt really uncomfortable. I mean, I was just a kid. How could I make that choice? Dad threatened that if I didn't go with him, that would be it. He'd cut all contact with me. I just sat there shaking my head, too upset to speak. His last words to me were, I can't believe you chose to stay with that snake. I was in floods of tears as I watched him leave, and I was there.
What? What? That don't... This has to come from our Caucasian friends. Because ain't no way in left right hell a nigga's gonna be like, hey, you wanna stay with me or you wanna stay with the cheating bitch? Or I'll just stay with Mom most of the time and you can watch me on the weekend. Okay. Have a nice life, Jack.
Her first scan. It's when we got a huge shock. Mom wasn't just pregnant. She was having triplets. I had no idea who the father of the babies was. Mom
Why do they always got to stretch shit? The title says, My three brothers believe I'm their mama. Fucking idiot, man.
used to talk about him. She just said she made a mistake and the guy didn't even know she was pregnant. Pregnancy was rough. It's hard when you're having triplets. When Mom went into labor, she was forced to have an emergency C-section. She lost so much blood, she almost died. I felt so helpless. All I could do was sit in the waiting room crying as medics rushed past to help my mom. One of the nurses tried to make me feel better, but nothing she could say could make me stop worrying. I couldn't lose her. She was all I had. When they finally let me visit, she looked so pale and tired. My three baby brothers were gorgeous. The second I held one of them in my arms, I was in love. Mom said, promise me that if anything ever happens to me, you'll look after your brothers. You're being silly, I said. Nothing's going to happen to you. But I could tell it was important to my mom, so I promised I'd always be there for my brothers. Mom let me pick out names, and I called them Caleb, Christopher, and Conrad. After my brothers were born, life was hard. Mom suffered postnatal depression, which made it hard for her to look after the baby, so I did everything for them. Caleb's first word was mom, but he said it to me. I tried to tell him I wasn't his mom, I was his sister, but he wouldn't stop calling me mom, and soon all my brothers called me mom as well. Mom wasn't too happy, but I have to say it was really cute. Even though I took care of my brothers, I still got good grades. When I was old enough, I applied to Harvard and got accepted. I was so happy, but I remembered that Mom and my brothers needed me, so I decided to go to community college instead. When Mom found out about it, she burst into tears. She didn't want me to give up my dreams because of her mistake, so I agreed to go to Harvard. But then there was a bigger obstacle. When my brothers realized I was leaving, they didn't take it very well. Caleb told me he was going to hold on to me forever, so I couldn't leave. So I suggested they all move to Massachusetts with me. We got an apartment near campus, so it was easy for me to get to classes. It was a whole new start for all of us. Mom was happier and she started taking care of us again. But one day, I was called out of class. When I went to the dean's office, there were two policemen waiting. They told me my mom had had a heart attack. I was in the hospital, but it wasn't looking good. I couldn't believe it. We're supposed to be building a new life together, not ending it. The police took me to the hospital where my mom was on life support. My brothers were already there, and I told them everything would be okay. I don't think they believed me. I'm not religious, but I spent the next day and night praying. Do anything as long as Mom lived. I couldn't lose her. Mom didn't survive. That was the worst day of my life. I didn't just lose my mother, I lost all hope. What's the point of doing anything when you can lose it all in the blink of an eye? I wanted to take my brothers home with me, but it wasn't going to be easy. PS said they should be in foster care. I said no way. We'd lost our mom. We couldn't lose each other. He said it was too much for someone my age to look after triplets, but I'd been taking care of them since they were born. Couldn't they see I knew what I was doing? I had to go to court, but eventually I was awarded full custody of the boys. I was their sister and their mom. Of course, I had to drop out of college. There was no way I could study and be there for my brothers. Family was more important than a college degree, even from Harvard. Mom had an insurance policy, which was enough to keep us going for a while, but it wasn't going to last forever. I needed to find a job. Then one of my friends from Harvard called me. She said she worked for a freelance writing company and she wondered whether I was interested in writing for them. That's how I started my freelance career. I made enough money to pay the bills and I could stay home with my brothers instead of having to pay for childcare. For the next few years, we were a happy family, but one morning, I woke up feeling wiped out, like I hadn't slept. I was used to being tired all the time, but this was something else. It was hard getting out of bed, but I had to make sure my brothers got to school. As I made their breakfast, suddenly I was hit with a massive headache. You okay? Asked Conrad. I'm fine, I said, popping a couple painkillers, but they didn't help. In fact, my headache got worse and my vision went all blurry.
Oh, Lord.
Suddenly I collapsed. My head felt like it was split in two. I was in so much pain I thought I was going to die. Everything went black. I couldn't see.
Oh, Lord.
Conrad, Christopher, Caleb, I shouted. I need to go to the emergency room. I wanted to be strong for my brothers, but I was in agony. Couldn't see a thing as they helped me down the stairs to get a cab. Halfway down, I collapsed. Couldn't hold on to me, and I fell down the last few stairs. I was lucky not to break my neck, screaming in pain all the way to the hospital. My brothers were panicking, yelling at the driver to go faster. We rushed to the emergency room, and as soon as they saw me, they got me to an examination room. The doctor told me I had something called giant cell arteritis. It's when the arteries which support the optic nerve in the eye become inflamed, blocking the nerve so it can't get enough blood. There's a cure, right? I said. You can give me a pill or something. I'm sorry, the doctor said. There's no cure. You're permanently blind. I felt like my world shattered into a million pieces. Couldn't be blind. I had to look after my brothers. Begged the doctor to do something. There had to be a cure. Had to be. But the doctor said there was nothing he could do. Brothers came to visit me. Conrad said they brought me flowers so the smell would cheer me up, but it made me miserable. What's the point of smelling flowers you can't see? EPS put the triplets into foster care, but they couldn't find a family to take all three of them, so they were placed with separate families. It broke my heart to think of them all alone without me, to help them with their homework or talk through their problems. What could I do? I was blind and useless. I thought things couldn't get any worse. I was wrong. Doctors did a lot of tests on me when I lost my sight. Told me the reason I'd been so tired was because I had leukemia. But I didn't start treatment right away. I would be dead in 6 months. Of course, I started treatment, but it was so stressful. All I could think about was how I was going to look after my brothers when I was out of the hospital. How could we pay our bills when I had to pay for chemotherapy?
What? What? Why?
At last, the doctors said I could go home, but the thought of being out of the hospital filled me with dread. I had to prove to CPS again that I could look after my brothers, but I didn't know if I could. I was disabled and struggling to cope with being blind.
Well,
I didn't have a job. The only reason I still had my apartment was because of my mom's insurance policy, but that money was running out. I went to meeting after meeting with CPS and pretended everything was fine, but inside, I was falling apart. The only thing that kept me going was the promise I'd made to my mom. I couldn't help thinking they'd be better off without me. Eventually, CPS said the boys could come back to live with me, but I was worried they'd made the wrong decision. I cried all the time when my brothers were in school. Felt like my life was over. I was supposed to be a Harvard graduate in a well-paid job, not blind, unemployed, and struggling to raise 3 boys. One day, I was sitting on my bed, crying. I heard Caleb say to me, "What's wrong?" "Caleb," I gasped, "you're supposed to be at school." Caleb told me he'd forgotten his homework, so he'd come back for it and found me like this. It all came flooding out. I told him about how I always wanted to be a writer, but now I was useless. "You're not useless," said Caleb. He told me how much he loved me and said I could still be a writer. I could use the software. I laughed and told him not to be stupid. We didn't have the money for the software I needed. So, after he'd finished his homework, Caleb sat down with me to write my book. I always planned on writing the next big American novel, but Caleb told me I needed to write my autobiography. He'd said I was an inspiration. The last thing I felt like was an inspiration, but he was right. My life would make a good book. It took over a year of hard work, but at last, we had a book I was proud of. I sent it to a few publishers, but they all rejected it, so I published it myself. I didn't think anyone would buy it, but in that first month, I sold 1,000 copies. I had loads of 5-star reviews.
Shut up.
Nightmare Files.
For this story, my name will be Charlie. Years ago, my first year of college, I lived in a dorm. But if only y'all knew what was going to happen. I earned a scholarship in college for baseball, and all the players lived in one dorm. Being that I was a freshman, they roommate was a senior, so he could show me what right looks like. He was a pretty tough guy who no one would mess with, so I felt like I was in good hands. It was the winter, and by that time of the school year, I was pretty set in my ways and comfortable. I was invited to a house party that one of the sororities were throwing, so I went with a few friends. When we got there, it was like any other party. People were outside, and some were inside having fun. While inside, there was music playing, along with people playing video games in one room, and it was like a board game going on in the other. I was upstairs. After a while, I went upstairs to see why anyone would be playing a board game at a party. When I got to the room, I noticed that it was the most quiet room in the house, which was odd to me. When I walked in the room, there were 4 girls and a guy sitting at a table. I asked what was going on, and they said they were using the Ouija board. I thought it sounded interesting, so I joined. But I never really believed in that type of stuff. While we were messing with the board, they said that there was a girl in the room. But I think that one of the other people that were playing moved it, so I left. That's when unexplainable stuff would happen to me in my dorm. I'd hear laughing in our hallways at odd times of the night, knocks on the window, and I started to have bad dreams. I told my roommate, but he told me it was stress from our upcoming midterms.
Don't
That
believe
went
it.
on for about 2 weeks. Then one night, everything changed for both of us. I remember it being a Thursday night when this happened. I was asleep in the middle of the night, and all I heard was, Charlie, 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 wake up. I remember making noises and being half asleep, but I acknowledged him. Then he said something that woke me up immediately. Charlie, what the fuck is that in the corner? I looked in the corner of the room, and I swear there was a silhouette of a girl. I was so afraid that I jumped off the top bunk, and I told my roommate to get up and run, but he was so petrified. He was under his covers quivering. Then she spoke.
Why do you seem so scared? All I wanted to do was sleep.
I told him I'm out, and we both ran out of our room.
Hell
He
no.
was yelling as she's talking. After
Run.
that, we were both so shaken that we never went back to that room. I
Run.
called the police, but when they came, they never found any girl. I don't know if it was because of the house party, Ouija board game, or coincidence, but that was a moment that I'll never forget. To this day, I still hear odd noises throughout the night wherever I go. Terrible. Terrible, terrible. So I'm a nurse, and I was driving home from work one night. The roads were deserted, and it was freezing that night. I don't live far from work, maybe a couple of miles. I'm driving down a residential street around the corner from my house, and I see a man laying face down in the street.
Keep
Once
going.
again, I'm a nurse, so my first thought was great. Gotta help this guy.
No, it isn't.
I was coming off of a long shift, and falls happen all the time.
No.
As I slowed down the car, I suddenly realized what
Don't
a
do
idiot
it.
move it was. I'm a 100-pound woman, and I don't carry a weapon. I thought I should do something to help this guy, so I called 911 and I drove past him and slowed to a stop at the end of the block. While I was stopped at the light, I explained to the dispatcher that there was a man in the road who might need assistance. All of a sudden, I hear a loud bang, bang from the driver's
Oh
side.
Lord.
I screamed and I looked over. A man
Drive.
was pounding on my window and jiggling the handle of my locked door. I
Drive.
looked in the rearview mirror and saw that there was no man laying in the street anymore. On the
Drive.
phone with 911, I screamed, "I'm so scared," to the dispatcher and floored it through the red light. I
Ooh.
quickly told him what had happened, and even though I was right by my house, he told me to keep driving. After a few minutes, I had calmed down, and he told me to loop back around. I pulled over down the road from my house, and I stayed in the car.
Who took?
I didn't see the man anywhere, so I got off the phone with the dispatcher.
Wait a minute. How did dispatcher gonna tell you circle back around? What? Oh, Slim,
He
no.
told me he was sending a police car to cruise the area. As I gather up my things and do a final scan of the area, then I see the man. He was
What?
walking with two other men. I hunched way down in my car until they were further down the road, then bolted into my house.
Wait,
I don't know
what?
if he had ill intent, but it freaks me the hell out that he wasn't alone. Just always, always lock your doors. This happened 2 years ago.
That was
My name is
bullshit.
James, and my girlfriend at the time was Susie. Susie and I got into an argument about a girl. She was just texting me about the edibles. The girl just wanted to know who had edibles and the prices on them. I remember I used the bathroom, and after I came back to the living room, I saw Susie on my phone, and she looked angry. She started asking questions about the girl. You know, regular questions. Am I cheating on her? Is she pretty? The most disturbing one was, if she was right here, right now, would I kiss her or my girlfriend? That was a PG version of what she really asked. I told her she texted me about edibles, and besides that, the girl doesn't even like guys. But I don't think my girlfriend knew that. So we continued to argue for about 20 minutes. I started to say this is stupid, and I remember looking at the clock, and it was 11 p.m. Since she was staying over that night, I told her we should just stop fighting and try to get some sleep or watch a movie. We agreed and turned on a movie. We were watching Don't Be a Menace to South Central while drinking your juice in the hood. As we were watching the movie, I noticed she was on her phone typing fast and just really involved in her phone. Every time I leaned in a little closer to see what was going on, she would always move her phone away and just give me a cold shoulder. We continued watching the movie until I heard somebody at my door. I said, I wonder who that could be at this time. Again, I looked at the clock, and now it was 1 a.m. My mom was in her room asleep, but after she heard the doorbell, she woke up asking who that was. I told her I didn't know, but I was going to find out. So as I started going to the door, I heard whispering from my girlfriend, like she was on the phone or something. I didn't really pay attention to it, so I finally got to the door and I looked through the peephole. I was met with some tall dude wearing mostly all black. I talked to him through the door, and I asked him, what do you want? He replies with, I'm just here to drop off a package. Sorry, I'm late. And I was thinking, who delivers a package at 1 a.m? So I told him to leave, and he could come back some other time to deliver the package. He said no, in a deep, commanding voice. Just in that moment, my ex-girlfriend, Susie, comes walking towards me with a grin on her face. She says to me, so you're really not going to tell me who that girl was texting you? I explained that she wasn't anybody, and I didn't know her like that. And this is the wrong time to be asking me a question like that when there's somebody at the door I didn't know. To this day, what she said still gives me the chills just thinking about it. She said, the guy at the door, he's here to get rid of you. At first, I gave out a nervous laugh and said, that's not funny. She said, yeah, it is. Well, at least for me it is. As this was going on, the guy at the door kept messing with the door handle, trying to get in.
Oh, hell no.
So I was leaning up against the door, preventing him to come in.
No.
As I looked behind me, Susie was gone. A few seconds later, she comes back with a knife and said, either he's going to get you or I will.
Oh, hell no.
I started flipping out and thinking, what am I going to do?
Somebody
I can't
punch
die
this
right
bitch.
here. Just in that moment, I heard a commanding voice saying, back away from the door or we'll shoot. I thought to myself, what the fuck? So I swung open the door, and there was the police. One of the police officers told Susie to drop the knife because when I took my eyes off of her and I opened the door, she was right behind me, like literally right behind me. But the officer saying that must have scared her, and she dropped the knife immediately. Apparently, while all this was going on, my mom called the cops and explained the situation the best she could. She pretended to be asleep so she wouldn't cause attention to herself and could get help as fast as she could. The police arrested both of them and took them to the station. Apparently, the guy that was there was her cousin. And the whole time the movie was playing, she was texting him, telling him to come over and quote unquote, deal with me. I'm just happy that I'm still here today. My mom saved my life. I don't even want to imagine what they would have done with me.
Hell no. Nobody believed that.
My name is Chris, and this happened to me in the late 1970s. I grew up in a poor neighborhood in Calgary, Alberta. And like most young kids, I had a number of friends from school and the neighborhood. I was 13 at the time, and this was right at the very beginning of the personal home computer revolution. You would hear about personal computers on the news all the time. However, no one actually owned a home computer, and it was almost like a story of science fiction to actually see one. One day, my friend started talking about this university professor who moved into one of our duplexes near our school. He was supposed to be a really cool guy who had all kinds of gadgets in his apartments, and he actually owned a personal computer. One afternoon, when walking home from school, I was crossing through a park near the professor's house. From the second floor balcony of the duplex, I saw some of my friends and they waved to me to come over, so I did. The teacher lived on the second floor of a 2-story duplex and looked the part of a teacher with shaggy hair, beard, and glasses. At the time, I was too young and naive to see the warning signs about this guy.
How many minutes?
He lived alone in a 3-bedroom duplex apartment. He said he had a girlfriend, but we never actually saw any woman ever at the apartment when me and my friends were there. He had a lot of weird-looking camera equipment and developed his own film. Most importantly, he was a computer science teacher when the field was pretty brand new, and he had built a home computer from scratch. My friends and I thought he was the coolest guy we ever met. He had all kinds of games on his computer, and he allowed any of the young guys in the neighborhood to pop by and play on his computer. He also had all kinds of weird gadgets and experiments. He had one of those Jacob Ladder lightning arc gadgets you'd see in those old horror movies. He always seemed to have some new gadget he was at his teacher's house to play on the computers, or see his weird gadgets all the time. Sometimes he'd get very physical and grab one of us from behind and bear hug us when he was greeting us. Or he'd stand uncomfortably close to us. After a few months, we were getting suspicious about this guy. He didn't seem to have any family or friends. Sometimes, when there were a lot of kids at his apartment and he was distracted, we would snoop around and look in his cabinets and things like that. We find weird items like a pair of brass knuckles, handcuffs, and some beads that looked like they were supposed to be white, but they had dried up brown stuff on it. And the door to his bedroom was always locked. One day, when there was a lot of kids there, he put on some music. He always puts on music, but this time it wasn't top 40 music like he usually would put on. It was like folk music.
This is the story of how my village survived Ebola. Bats brought the tiny Ebola germs, too small to see, so small yet so dangerous. Without realizing, grandfather rubbed a little blood in his eye. Ebola germs came into his body. Days went by. Then grandfather got a terrible fever and weakness. We thought it was malaria, but it was soon much worse. He had vomiting and diarrhea. His fever got even higher. I ran to get the nurse. But grandfather had already died. I was heartbroken. The nurse thought it might be Ebola, a disease caught from bush meat, but which spreads from person to person. Others in our region had already died of this new disease. Unless we understood the disease and followed the rules, it could spread further and kill many more people. She explained that Ebola was in the body fluids of someone who was sick or had died of Ebola. Their sweat, tears, mucus, saliva, vomit, diarrhea, urine, breast milk, sexual fluids, and blood. When we touch a sick person's body fluids, the Ebola germs can get into small breaks in our skin or into our eyes, nose, or mouth. The Ebola germs spread into our body and make us sick. When somebody dies of Ebola, that body is much more contagious. No one should ever touch the dead body. The nurse advised us to wash our hands with soap and water right away. She contacted the trained burial team to help us bury grandfather's body safely. The burial team came. They comforted us and explained what they had to do to protect us. The team wore protective clothing that kept them safe from the dangerous germs. They sprayed grandfather's room and his body with chlorine to destroy the Ebola germs. They put his body safely away in a bag to prevent the spread of Ebola. No one could touch the body of anyone who had died with signs of the disease. They also banned his mattress, bedding, and clothes. Anything that might have his germs. All these actions made us safer. It was too great a risk to follow all our traditions. But we still honored grandfather in the time of Ebola. Our chief gathered all the villagers together after grandfather's death. He explained that it's natural for us to fear Ebola, but if we trust in our health workers and follow their rules, we could stop the disease. The nurse explained to us, when a person has symptoms such as fever, don't touch them. Get them to the treatment center right away. They will have the best chance of surviving and they won't spread Ebola. She advised us to wash our hands with soap and water many times a day. The whole village agreed to follow these rules. Since we all had close contact with grandfather, we were at risk of getting Ebola. We had to stay home. A health worker visited us every day to see whether we had fever or signs of sickness. We would show signs within 21 days if we had Ebola. Many days passed, and I thought we would all stay healthy. But one morning, I found my mother burning with fever. I knew I couldn't touch her. She was now contagious. My father came in. He told me he was taking my mother away to our uncle's house in the nearby village. He was afraid to take her to the treatment center, afraid he'd never see her again. I knew I had to stop them. I was young, but I stood up to both of them. I told them, this could be Ebola. She must go to the treatment center right away. We needed to trust in our health workers to save her, save ourselves, and save our village. I saw in their faces that they understood. Running away would only lead to more death and suffering. My mother tested positive for Ebola. They found her a bed. At first, the health workers looked scary, but I knew they wore the suits to protect themselves. And inside, they were normal people like the nurse. They took good care of my mother. They gave her fluids, medicine, and food, and helped her body stay strong to fight Ebola. I missed my mother very much, but I could still talk to her on the phone. Sadly, some people in my village didn't survive, but my mother got better day by day. Soon, we were able to see her from a safe distance. One day, the nurse announced that my mother would live. Now we were safe to hug and kiss her. It was a day to celebrate. Our village followed their rules. We trusted our health workers. For us sick for care right away. For the safe burial team when one of our people died, and we always washed our hands with soap and water. Our village survived Ebola. Yours can too.
It's Mattress Firm's semi-annual sale. Save up to $400 on our top-rated brands. Plus,
this is the story of how cholera changed my village. Tiny germs of cholera, too small to see, spread through the river. So small, yet so dangerous. Without realizing, women carried cholera home in the water. Flies carried cholera on their feet. Unwashed hands spread it too. We swallowed cholera germs in our water, on our food, and on our fingers. It happened so fast. Morning, my father was very sick. He had diarrhea that looked like rainwater and poured out of him. I was so scared. I went for help.
They got cholera.
I never rode so fast. One look at my father, and the nurse knew it was cholera. We had to work fast to save him. We made a special drink from cloth and boiled it for 1 minute. Then we mixed half a teaspoon of salt and 6 teaspoons of sugar in 1 liter of this safe water. It tasted like tears, not too salty, before my eyes. But he soon felt a little stronger. The nurse explained to me that not everyone who swallows cholera germs gets sick like my father, but they can still spread the disease. Now I needed to take safe water to my village and teach them how to protect themselves from cholera. I saw a girl carrying water. I told her she could make the water safe by adding chlorine drops and waiting half an hour. There was a man about to eat with unclean hands. I told him to always wash his hands with soap and safe water after going to the toilet. Only with clean hands could he eat safely. I saw villagers spray cholera into a river. I told them we needed to.
People in these places don't know to wash their damn hands. That's shocking.
Dig latrines far from the river, at least 30 meters away. This was important to keep our village clean. I found a mother preparing unsafe food. I told her, first, we must wash our hands with safe water. Then, we had to wash and peel the food, cook it, and always eat it hot, and protect it from flies. I spread the word throughout my village and ran to find my father.
Nobody in
I was so happy to see he was better. Our village became healthy. Now we filter and boil our water to make sure it is safe. We always use latrines and always wash our hands after. Food is safe from flies, washed and peeled and cooked. And we always wash our hands before cooking and eating. We made our village safe from cholera. Spread the word. Your village can be safe too.
They're out there, walking the streets. You may not see them, but they're there. They're out there. That's why we came here. Welcome to our flagship hospital on Long Island, Mount Sinai, South Nassau. Which hospital you choose can make all the difference in the world.
Hello, friends. I am driving in a state of extreme sadness because of what had just happened to me. My mood is very unstable, and I need motivation more than ever. Please, listen to the story I'm about to tell you, and help me, because I'm really angry right now. I'm John, 27, currently living in the US with my wife and son. My wife, Katie, 27, was a friend of mine. My wife and I met when we were both 20 years old, young, and a bit stupid. You know, students after 2 years of college will fall into the illusion that they know everything they need to know in the world, and hence act immature. Besides, the crisis of studies and employment after graduation was another thing that led us to have frequent parties in the dorm. At that time, both Katie and I attended a party with our friends. We drank a lot of alcohol and got drunk the first night we met. I only remembered everything when I woke up with Katie lying naked next to me, wrapped in my thin blanket in my bed in my dorm room. It turned out we were drunk and brought each other to my room, had sex, and fell asleep like that. Seeing Katie's beautiful face and attractive body beside me, I completely forgot to ask if she used any contraception, because I was sure I didn't see a condom used that night. But we got along well in sex, so after that first night, we had more dates of the same type a few more times. I didn't know what it was like for Katie, but for me, everything was just youthful bliss at the time. I didn't think about long-term commitment. But outside my expectations, Katie discovered a few weeks later that she was pregnant. Yes, it was true that for the first time when we had sex, I was not sure if any contraceptive methods were used, and I also did not objectively ask Katie because I trusted her. But the result was then like that. She got pregnant. I couldn't help but doubt the origin of that pregnancy. Although we had sex together before, there was no guarantee that I was her only one. But I was once again moved by the frail looks and tears of Katie when she brought the news of her pregnancy to me. She was worried that she wouldn't be able to finish her thesis and graduate on time because of the pregnancy. I loved her and felt pity for her because I was about to join the US Marines 5 months later to cover my studies, which meant that pregnant Katie would have to take care of the baby alone. More importantly, I had to grow up in a house without a father, and I swore to myself that I would never allow that to happen to my children in the future. So though my love for Katie wasn't deep enough, I proposed to her before I left. My proposal was heavy because I was so young and not ready. Fast forward to us at present, which is 7 years after everything began. We were married as my promise before joining the US Marines. Although our marriage was difficult at times, with many problems arising because we did not love and understand each other enough to sympathize, we learned how to reconcile everything and gradually fell deep in love with each other. Katie always devoted herself to me. She waited for me faithfully and patiently the days I was in the Army. I was very touched by that affection and her faithfulness. The day I returned, Katie and my son came to pick me up. The feelings at that time were indescribably special when in my arms were not only beautiful Katie, but our boy, the fruit of our love. To make up for her lonely days, I tried my best to support my family. I was always honest with Katie and my son. Whatever happens, I never allow myself to let my son grow up without the loving care of both parents. As for Katie, sometimes I feel that she's always so ecstatic, as if she regretted and atoned for something she did in the past. My hunch was indeed true. At a recent gathering of the university that Katie and I attended, I wasn't certain whether it was accidental or not, but an old friend whom I knew about the time I met my wife approached me at the party. His name was Joseph. Ever since meeting at the party, he has been clinging to me with a very strange and somewhat aggressive expression. He kept asking me if I was still with Katie, to which I said yes. But when I tried to ask why he asked me about Katie so much, he just laughed outrageously. I tried to stay close to him at that party and get him drunk to find out the truth. While too drunk to control his words, Joseph mentioned too many crazy things. He said he was blackmailing my wife recently, while I as a husband didn't know a damn thing. He said that recently he was in a bad position and needed money to sustain his life, and my wife has been hiding a secret that he can use to ask for money. He screamed that he dated Katie before me, yet I stole her from him. I wasn't sure what he meant and asked him to explain, and that was when the secret was revealed. He said that Katie had been dating him for months before I showed up at a party, just when they were angry at each other. It was a big problem regarding their intention after graduating from university, and temporarily, they could not find a common voice, So they argued nonstop. The quarrel lasted until the day I met Katie at the party that made us drunk and had sex with each other. Joseph also mentioned in detail that although they argued, they had sex as usual until she met me for the first time and loved me. From then on, Katie refused to talk or attempt to heal the relationship with him anymore. He hated me for it. Oh my God. Can you believe such shocking news? So this means the son I love may not be my biological son? And Katie, the wife who always appeared to be faithful and willing to sacrifice, turned out to have always been deceiving me? I couldn't get those thoughts out of my head. In a fit of anger, I punched the bastard Joseph in a daze of the old classmates. Then I immediately drove home with too many thoughts in my head. I didn't interrogate Katie immediately because she was on a long business trip outside the city we lived in. I didn't want to talk to her right away. When I went home and faced our 7-year-old son, I broke down and cried, which made my son extremely worried. I did not explain anything, but lulled him to sleep instead. Next morning, I immediately went to buy a DNA kit that could be used at home and used it with my son. I followed the directions on the box while praying that I was just too suspicious. I may hate my wife, but I love my son more than anything and don't want any reason to hate him. But fate did not smile at me. The results came back a day after when my son was playing soccer in the backyard. 0%. He is not my biological son. My whole world turned upside down. I sat dumbfounded at not knowing how to act or feel at the time. I could not even cry. I still love my son, even then when I knew he is not my own. I was with him when he was born, and I will never leave him. Absolutely nothing would change that. But I was nothing more than a zombie at that moment. I hated my wife more than ever. She cheated on me for the past 7 years and let me raise someone else's child. What a shame. She knew the truth from the beginning, yet decided to cheat on me. I couldn't forgive that deceitful woman. I phoned Katie during that furious moment and said everything without giving her a chance to explain. At the end of the phone call, when Katie was crying and begging me to wait for her to come back since she was only 30 minutes away from home, I became colder than ever. I ended the conversation like this. Don't find me and your son anymore. We will disappear from your life immediately, while you should start thinking about going to court and getting divorced. And I will claim custody of the child. After that, I hung up immediately. It took me nearly 15 minutes to pack up the things I needed to take my son with me. He kept asking for a reason, but I did not explain. I just wanted to take him out of that house as soon as possible so that my wife could not arrive home in time to stop us. My whole marriage was a lie, and I was extremely depressed. As I was loading our stuff into the trunk of the car, I suddenly heard my son call from behind, asking me to run to the middle of the road to get the ball. He was playing with it, but unintentionally let it roll away. Being in a rush and frustrated, I didn't pay much attention and rushed out to get that damn ball. But at that very moment, a car from somewhere appeared. I stood dumbfounded when seeing the headlights of the car were less than 2 meters away from me, when suddenly there was a strong thrust from somewhere, pushing me away. I escaped death miraculously thanks to that. But when I turned around, I saw my son standing on the porch, crying loudly. Between us was a horrific scene, with Katie being tossed away many meters from the car. She lied there, in the middle of a pool of blood, having stopped breathing next to her son's balloon. Katie, my cheating wife, atoned for her sins with her own life. At that moment of life and death, she proved her worth by sacrificing herself to save me from the car. That girl has been in love with me and faithful to me ever since the first night we were together. Her mistakes belonged entirely in the past, but because of wanting to preserve the happiness of the family, she was unable to say the truth. Yet I was a cowardly husband who did not give her a chance to explain. My anger has killed Katie. My son has no mother now because of my stupidity. I will never be able to forgive myself and the one who has caused all these things. It has been 1 month since the accident, and today I have completed my investigation. I have sent our son to my parents' house so that I can safely complete the task of revenge for Katie in particular, and the happiness of my family in general. I have found the home address of that goddamn Joseph. After today, there will only be either that bastard or I survive. I am ready to go to jail for the things I intend to do with him, as long as I can avenge my ill-fated Katie. Don't ask me about my intentions, because it will be too violent to mention here. Don't try to stop me either, because I've made up my mind. I just pray that my parents will be able to take care of my son well enough. He has suffered so much. Wish me luck, guys. Goodbye.
Okay, that was dumb. Really dumb.